Welcome back to Petty Astrology. I'm your host, Kaycee Felton-Lui. This is the Season 3 finale, if you can believe it. We've talked all about how tough the astrology this year has been, and it hasn't been easy for most of us. Now that it's Capricorn season, a lot of us are taking stock of where we've been, all that we've accomplished, and I'm sure that you've done more than you even remember at this point in this roller coaster of a year. But even if all you did in 2024 was survive, I hope you're proud of that. Because as I, and I'm sure many of my listeners know, that's not always an easy thing to do. Not everyone got to finish 2024. And though I don't personally believe that the dead suffer, I kind of think that's one of the perks, actually. I do think that for those of us still here, it helps to have gratitude for the fact that we are still here. We get to celebrate the holidays, maybe gather with some loved ones, or spend some quality time alone. We might get to eat something delicious, watch our favorite movie, listen to a banger of a song. We get to make decisions, make mistakes, learn from them, grow, succeed, try and try again. Every day a new opportunity. If no one else says it to you, I want you to know I'm proud of you for making it this far, for choosing to continue, even if it is hard sometimes. It makes all of those good things that much sweeter. Today on the podcast, I talk about ending the year with the new moon in Capricorn, then a look at the astrology of the week ahead, and what you can expect from Season 4 of Petty Astrology. Our last new moon of 2024 is happening on Monday, December 30th, if you're here in the US, and it's happening at 2:26 p.m. Pacific time at 9 degrees and 43 minutes of Capricorn. Now, Capricorn doesn't always sound the most fun to people. It's kind of what I've gathered from all of the pop astrology over the years. And, I am a fan of Capricorn energy. And as I was talking about in the intro, this is a very reflective time of year. And new moons are always about looking forward, because they're about planting seeds. And so if you're doing that, it's a good idea to think about, what am I planting? What am I cultivating? And it's a time of year where if you are experiencing winter or just the emotions of this season, it can be very difficult to look forward. And it feels sometimes like where we are now is where we'll always be in some ways. And some of that is perhaps seasonal depression talking. So, make sure that you take your vitamin D, you speak to your doctor, and you take care of yourself. But it is a good practice to look forward. And that is what the new moon is always asking us to do. But in this case, I want to advise you to lean into that Capricorn energy in the sense that there's another side to it. It's not always about the mountain that you have yet to climb, because you're already on the mountain. You've been on this mountain your whole life. And, you may have not gotten to the peak that you thought you were going towards, but you've ended up somewhere else. And I would guarantee that you've learned a lot to get to where you are now. That you have things that you've mastered in some way, parts of yourself maybe that you've mastered. And this is not to say that you have to be exactly where you want to be right now. Most of us are not exactly where we want to be right now. But we've gotten ourselves this far. And the reason I bring all of this up is because the main aspect that this new moon is making is sextile Saturn, which is still very much in Pisces. This is a moment where, let's be real, about where we are, what we've done, the challenges, the things that we fucked up even. And instead of beating ourselves up, dragging ourselves by the hair with the truth, the reality, the limitations, the things that haven't gone the way we wanted them to go, we can just simply acknowledge them. Yeah, that happened. I did that. Maybe it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go, but I got something out of it. Even if it's just a lesson, even if it's just a chapter that we want to close. Take stock of those gains because they're yours. They belong to you. The good, bad, not so sexy, all of it. All of it is evidence that you're alive, that you're growing, that you're on your way somewhere. So look at some of those things. You can look as far as the start of your life, but if that's too overwhelming, just look at this year. Just look at the things that you did, even if it was just getting through this year, because all of it is evidence that you are capable, that you are powerful, that you've done things that you probably never thought you could do. And sometimes it's good to be wrong. Sometimes it's good to be surprised at what's possible for you. And so I'd love for you to remember the moments that you've surprised yourself, that you've made your own dreams come true, that you've done something that seemed impossible, seemed so far out of your field of view that why would it even occur to you? Because that's magic. And it's the magic of being a physical being here on Earth, which is part of the essence of Capricorn energy. We get to be here. We get to make decisions. We get to carve a path, whatever that path is, whether it changes or whether it's the road we've always been on. That's the gift of being a human being, of being here now, physically on this earth, as challenging and complex and infuriating and frustrating as it can be. We get to be here. We get to do things. And so for this new moon in Capricorn, what I am seeing is the universe opening this beautiful big window and saying, look out there. What do you see? And what do you want to see? Because we can set our sights on something and we can dream it into being by taking first steps, starting on a road that seems impossible or like a fantasy. And sometimes those fantasies come true. And sometimes we end up somewhere else and we find good things there too. But if we want to be intentional about what it is we want to manifest in our lives, we want to be careful about how we direct our energy. And so one way that we can do that is by setting intentions, which really just means making it known to the universe what it is that you want, what you're looking for, the things that for now live in your mind or in your spirit that you would like to bring down to earth, that you would like to be a part of your physical experience here. That's what manifesting is. So again, this new moon is at 9 degrees and 43 minutes of Capricorn. So if it's happening in your first house, you're going to want to think about what intentions that you want to set around what you want to do with yourself in this life. And don't freak yourself out, all right? You're not signing a contract, but you are manifesting. So how do you want to direct your energy right now in terms of what you want to be doing 20, 30 years from now? And then once you get overwhelmed by that, You want to narrow it back down to the next 6 months. Like, what do the next 6 months have to say about this more long-term aspect of what you want to do? And this is not about career, although maybe career is a part of what you want to do. But think about it in non-capitalist terms. Like, you have the opportunity to build something with your life. So set some intentions about what you want that to be. If this new moon is happening in your second house, you're going to want to set intentions around your long-term finances, your resources, whatever the things in life that you value. What are your intentions for those things? What would you like to get out of those things long-term? And how can the next 6 months be a part of you paving the way for that? If this new moon in Capricorn is happening in your third house, you want to think about your long-term goals for your mindset and how you communicate. And that can be creative as well, because for those of us who are artists, part of our art is communication. So what are you saying? What are you trying to say to the world? How do you want to say it? Are you placing limitations around what's possible for you? And is that realistic? Is it realistic for you to limit yourself in the way that you have been? This is also a good one for setting intentions around what you'd like to build within your local community, within your neighborhood. If you're trying to establish or work on any mutual aid projects, this can be a very powerful lunation for that. If this new moon is happening in your fourth house, this can be around your house, your home, what you're trying to build for yourself. Some of us would like a stable place to live. So what does that look like for you? What does that mean to you? And this can also be around your long-term intentions for your emotional self and how you want where you've been to shape where you're going in the future. What do you want to build from that? If this new moon is happening in your fifth house, you're going to want to think about your intentions around your creativity, how you put yourself out in the world, how you take risks even. Are you playing it too safe? Is there more that you want to do that you're telling yourself is not possible for you? You have a lot of opportunity right now to be making real things out of your imagined ideas. So I hope that you're taking advantage of it and setting some intentions with that power. If this new moon is happening in your sixth house, you're going to want to set intentions around what you want to do for the day job. This is more about work. And it's also about just how you arrange your day-to-day life. Your routine. Is how you're living your day-to-day life supportive of your long-term goals? If this new moon is happening in your seventh house, you're going to want to set intentions around your partnerships. And that can be romantic, that can be friendships, it can also be clients, and it can be any kind of contractual relationship or literal contract that you're involved in. So you're going to want to take a look at what you intend long-term in those areas. What would it take to make those partnerships and contracts sustainable for you in the long term? If this new moon is happening in your eighth house, you're going to want to look at your intentions around making sure that you're supported long-term, whether that's through mental health support, whether that's making sure that you're staying connected and close to people, or letting yourself get close to people. Are you doing it all on your own? Does it really have to be that way? Are there resources that you could lean into that perhaps you have not? Nobody can get anywhere all on their own, so it's important that you take a look at if you're supporting yourself enough. If this new moon in Capricorn is happening in your ninth house, you're going to want to look at what you'd like to learn long term. What are you really trying to dig into? And maybe it's formal education, maybe it's some other kind of learning or training. And what do you want to do with that learning? Are you going to share what you know with the world in some way? And how might you want to do that? Because we all know things, but you know certain things that I don't know, that other people don't know. So what would you like to do with that information, with those experiences that you've had? If this new moon is happening in your 10th house, this is about your intentions around your calling. You get this life. You get to build something from it, or some things from it. It doesn't have to be just the one thing. So what are your intentions around supporting those goals? What does that look like for you? How can you bring those long-term goals into the present? If this new moon is happening in your 11th house, you're going to want to set intentions around what you're trying to build in terms of your community, who you know. And this can be in-person community, this can be online community, this can be your networks, just your contacts, and it can also be your friends more broadly. You know people, even if they're just acquaintances. You've got connections. So what are you trying to build out of those connections long term? What are they getting for you? And how do you want to interact with those people? Because people are power, and they're power especially for you, because they can help you move towards your goals in the long term, and you can help them. It can be a mutual exchange. So what does that look like for you? What does it feel like? What are your intentions around that? If this new moon in Capricorn is happening in your 12th house, you're going to want to set intentions around what you're building from your spiritual life, and how can you make your physical existence more reflective of your connection with the universe. No matter where this new moon is happening for you, I want you to understand that no matter what we do in this life or who we are, being a human being is inherently creative, because we get to be here and we get to do things that impact our reality. That's the essence of being alive in this physical space. And so at its core, this new moon is about that. It's about what it is that we want to manifest with our lives. And so I really can't think of better energy to head into this new year with, because regardless of how complicated the astrology is, there's so much possibility for what we can do. So I'm wishing you a dream-filled new moon in Capricorn and a happy new year. Our last week of 2024. I cannot believe it. This year has just flown by. I talked about the energy for Christmas and the first day of Hanukkah last week's episode, so you can go and revisit that. But it's a little bit more of a serious and contemplative holiday energy. And so something to keep in mind is December 26th, the moon will still be in Scorpio, so we're going to have a little bit more of that contemplative energy, but we also have Mercury opposing Jupiter and squaring off with Saturn. So there's a lot of reevaluation, contemplation happening here. You want to make sure that you're not ruminating too much. Like, when I was a kid, I fucking loved Christmas, like a lot of kids do. And I remember that the day after Christmas was always like all of the air being let out of a balloon. It was like kind of sad, like all of this buildup and excitement to Christmas was over. And then I would feel like kind of morose the next day. And so this energy is kind of giving me that. So, if you are in a position where it's a day off or you're relaxing, just make sure that you have some comforting, maybe gentle things to do, and catch yourself if you're overthinking, if you're taking things into more of a negative space. And if you find yourself contemplating things that are maybe a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit more emotional, I would just pay attention to what those things are telling you. about your current life circumstances, because maybe there are some adjustments that need to be made in your perspective and how you view things and how you frame them for yourself. Because the way that we talk to ourselves is incredibly important. It shapes how we greet the world, how we interact with other people and the world around us. And so we want to be really mindful of how we're framing things for ourselves. And so the other thing that I want us to keep in mind as we head into the end of this week, remember, we're moving toward that new moon on December 30th. So starting on the 26th, we're going to be leading up to that in terms of the energy. And what that often means is that we are in a more contemplative space. So it's kind of doubling up on that energy. And again, the discomfort and the things that are coming up are things to reflect on, to not beat yourself up with, but just to consider what they might be telling you about some adjustments that you may need to make. And so as we head to that new moon and to a new year, you want to just take those reflections and use them to kind of shape the path that you're laying out for yourself moving forward. Let those reflections inform whatever intentions you're going to set for yourself for this new moon. We get a little bit of a boost heading into the weekend because on December 27th, we have the moon moving into Sagittarius. That'll be helpful in looking forward and kind of thinking about what you want your vision for the future to be a little bit more. And we also have Venus squaring off with Uranus that day. And so this can be inspirational energy. There can be some tension associated with this aspect, but that tension can fuel some revelations and realizations about some adjustments that you might need to make and what actually might be more rewarding for you. So all of this is really making for a very powerful new moon in Capricorn. Tons of opportunities for reflection, and we really want to be deliberate about what it is that we want to manifest, because there is a lot going on in the world and there is a lot of uncertainty. And so it is very helpful, regardless of what's happening, to have your eye on the prize for yourself, because it will clarify things when the world gets very loud, when things get confusing, because we can always come back to center with our goals, our visions, and not to walk over other people or prioritize our needs and the things we want to do at other people's expense. That's kind of like what billionaires do, right? And I'm assuming most of us aren't billionaires listening to this podcast. So it is important that we hold on to the things that we want out of this life and let those things light our path forward. Sagittarius energy is about learning and expansion. And the truth about being a human is that we learn by doing things that make us a little uncomfortable, that are a little bit beyond what we're used to. And we don't have to, rush forward and change everything about ourselves and, completely leave everything we know behind. But it does benefit us to be open. And so as we're contemplating and reflecting and heading into this new year, this Sagittarius energy is going to help us expand our idea of what's possible for ourselves and clarify that there's more that we could be doing. So make sure that your intentions include things that excite you, that challenge you, that make you feel like your life is an adventure. Because isn't it? Couldn't it be? Sunday evening here in the US, things will start feeling a bit more grounded as the moon moves into Capricorn and starts heading right up to that new moon. It does feel like we're going to be getting down to business, getting a little bit more serious with those intentions. And then, of course, the new moon is happening on the 30th. And again, that's going to be at 2:26 p.m. Pacific time. And we will really be in that new moon energy through the rest of this year. And so my recommendation for all of us is to really embrace this energy. Whatever it is that you'd like to manifest for yourself with this new moon and in this new year, all of those things are going to require us to match the energy of the things that we want to manifest. And so the best way that we can do that is by practicing. So if you are looking to manifest a more empowered version of yourself, take these few days to very seriously double down on that and really do things in a way that embodies that energy. And with Capricorn, what is important to understand is that your foundation matters, right? If you build a house on a sandbank, that shit's not going to be very sturdy, is it? So think of these few days as your foundation for the intentions that you're setting. Give yourself a really solid starting place, and you will see over the next 6 months, if you keep conjuring that energy in your day-to-day life, by the time that we hit the full moon in Capricorn in July of 2025, I think you're going to be really impressed with what you're able to create for yourself. So those are the highlights for the end of 2024. I hope that it's restful for you, that you get to do some things that bring you joy, and that it's a good start to a new chapter in your life. Before we go, I want to talk about what you can expect from season 4 of Petty Astrology. Let me give you a little bit of context. So 2024 has been just an incredibly busy year for me. And I looked back and realized that between seasons 2 and 3, I made 50 public episodes of this podcast, and 49 of them were in 2024. So I have been working my ass off. And I have to say that doing astrology full-time this year was such a blessing. I've never enjoyed the work that I'm doing this much. And I've had jobs that I've liked before. But the sense of purpose and meaning and connecting with people in the way that I get to with astrology has really just fueled me to keep doing this. But some things are going to be changing next year and for season 4 in order to make this more sustainable for me. So, like I said, I've been doing astrology full-time in 2024, and unfortunately, it's just been very financially difficult to maintain that. And so as a consequence, I am going to be taking on even more work on the side because I need to pay my rent. I need to eat. And so the podcast isn't going anywhere. But public episodes will not be coming out every week. I just can't do another year of almost 50 episodes. That means almost every week this year, there was brand new, free Petty Astrology. The community that we've built together in Patreon has been wonderful. And so I will be redirecting a lot of my energy there. So for the deeper dive episodes, a lot of those are going to be for sponsors of this podcast. So if you are not a sponsor just yet, this might be the time to consider making the jump. I do really enjoy making episodes that come out for everyone. I love that they're accessible. So those are not going away completely, but I just can't promise that every week is going to be a brand new thing. But the good news is that for Patreon sponsors, that means that I'm going to be able to give you even more of my attention. I'm going to be able to take more time on the writing and the research and just really keep delivering more quality information. Some of those patron-only episodes will make their way to the public eventually, and some of them are just going to live in Patreon for the people who are supporting the work that I do. It's really important to me that I continue building the community over in Patreon, because as we move into 2025, as Pluto moves through Aquarius, we are going to see even more attempts to restrict our communication online. And so having this paywall actually provides a little measure of safety for myself and the people who subscribe, because not just anybody can roll in there. And there are plenty of people that probably won't like the things that I'm saying because I am an anti-fascist. I am an anti-capitalist, and I will continue talking about those things and about the consequences of empire, because while those topics may be unpopular or uncomfortable, they are real, and they are things that we need to talk about. So that is a factor here as well. Another thing that's going to be changing in 2025 is I'm going to be doing a lot more live streaming. And behind the scenes, I've been working on some equipment upgrades that I need to really make that happen in the way that I want it to. So I will keep you guys posted. If you are not a sponsor of the podcast, make sure that you're subscribed to the Patreon for free, because that's where you hear the updates. And you also get my newsletter, which is full of very useful information and even more astrology. Season 4 for Patreon sponsors is going to kick off with my episode on 2025 and an overview of all of this really wild astrology that we're going to be experiencing next year, getting us ready for that and just giving you an idea of some of the bigger moves that we're looking at. So I'm working on the research and the writing for that episode now. And again, if you're not a sponsor of this podcast, it's a good time to become one. You get a lot of bonus episodes and even more insights. And another thing that I'm going to be adding for 2025 is some more informal voice notes where I can talk more about current events and how the astrology is playing out in between episodes. So a lot to look forward to. I'm going to be taking a break from the public podcasts while I work on a few of those bigger episodes for the beginning of next year. But I've got some good stuff queued up for Patreon sponsors, so I'll still be around. I'll still be hanging out in Patreon. And speaking of, I want to take some time to thank my Patreon sponsors because they are the ones who make this podcast possible. So at the end of the season, we've got a Rough Sketch, Alexis, Allison, Elise, Alyssa, Andrea, Anita, Bethany, Brooke, Carrie, Kathy, Charmaine Joan, Cheyenne, Elena, Eli, Emily, Francesca, Jamie, Jen, Jessica, Caitlin, Keaton, Kendall, Lisette, Mackenzie, Mimi, Monica, Nick, Nicole, Olivia, Patricia, Rebecca, Max, Samantha, Shane, Shelby, Spencer, Ren, and Zach. Thank you so much for your sponsorship, for helping me make this season what it's been, and I'm very excited to bring you season 4. And before we go, I just want to share a few events that we have coming up over in Patreon, specifically the Astro Den Discord community, which is an astrology community that I started with Mackenzie Wollenzine and Jen Russell. And it's a space where we just hang out and we talk about astrology, we talk about our lives, we share emotional support memes. But we've got some cool stuff coming for 2025. On January 2nd, we're having our Visions for 2025 meeting. This is where we are doing our vision boards, setting our intentions for the year, writing out New Year's resolutions, whatever you want to do to kind of set the tone for 2025. We're going to be hanging out and getting together to do it. And the great thing about these meetings is that they happen in the voice channel, so you never have to be on camera. Super low pressure social interaction. We do some community building and dreaming forward together. Another thing that we're planning in the Astro Den is our very first book club meeting. So I am a very big fan of Dean Spade, who is a lawyer and an activist and a wonderful writer. And he's got a new book coming out called Love in a Fucked Up World. And I'm going to read the description. Lifelong activist and educator Dean Spade dares us to decide that our interpersonal actions are not separate from our politics of liberation and resistance. Many activist projects and resistance groups fall apart because people treat each other poorly, trying desperately to live out the cultural myths about dating and relationships that we are fed from an early age. How do we divest from the idea that one romantic partner will be the solution to all our problems? How do we bring our best thinking about freedom and justice into step with our desires for healing and connection? Love in a Fucked Up World is a resounding call to action and a practical manifesto for how to combat cultural scripts and take our relationships into our own hands, preparing us for the work of changing the world. And it makes a lot more sense for us to read this together and discuss it as a community. So if you would like to be a part of that, we are having our book club meeting on March 2nd, and it's also in the Astro Den on the Voice channel. So again, very low stakes and very fun. So if you would like to join in either of those events, please join us over in Patreon. I'll have the link in the description. That's it for this season. Tune in January for even more Petty Astrology.